The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. When Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of King Herod, behold, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star at its rising and have come to do him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was greatly troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Assembling all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They said to him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it has been written through the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, since from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" Then Herod called the Magi secretly and ascertained from them the time of the star's appearance. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search diligently for the child. When you have found him, bring me word that I too may go and do him homage." After their audience with the king, they set out. And behold, the star that they had seen at its rising preceded them until it came and stopped over the place where the child was. They were overjoyed at seeing the star, and on entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother. They prostrated themselves and did him homage. Then they opened their treasures and offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed for their country by another way. The Gospel of the Lord.
The Christian gospel is full of paradoxes, claims that make no sense in human terms, that the last shall be first and the first shall be last, that if we want to be great in the kingdom of heaven, we will be the servants of the rest, that a virgin can give birth to a child, that the suffering servant can eventually be recognized as the Lord of all creation. Another claim like that is that sometimes we have to stir our bodies, move, for our inner self to rise to the proper level of reflection and recommitment to the Christian life. It's easy in every time in history to get stuck in a rut, to be busy 24/7. And now with internet communication, the temptation is ever greater. We're never offline. Moments of quiet and reflection are harder to come by. People are working multiple jobs in order to provide for their family. Trips are endless for people with young children in terms of athletics and other kinds of things. No matter what our age, to be reflective is a challenge. And thus we've developed traditions within the Catholic Christian way of living that allow us to become more in touch with who we are and what our baptismal promises entail. There are things like days of recollection, not very demanding in terms of time, but at least they put us in a new context, so often surrounded by people who are trying to achieve the same goal. Here at Notre Dame, during the course of the academic year, there are various formats of retreat. Some are self-directed, others involve a lot of participation, some are preached by a trusted spiritual counselor. The Holy Cross community here at Notre Dame, later on in this week, will gather for several days of retreat, a chance for us to prepare ourselves for all the challenges of the spring semester. In addition to the forms of retreat, the same thing has been true of pilgrimages of one kind or another. To go on the road, the very act of traveling somewhere, some sacred spot, can put us in touch with our innermost desires and needs. We know, of course, that the Holy Land has been a place of pilgrimage from the very beginning. The same thing has been true in Rome as the center of the Catholic community with the residence of the Pope there. The Canterbury Tales, that great English classic, is basically a group of pilgrims going to Canterbury. And many of us are aware of the way, the path to Santiago de Compostela. A couple million people a year go there for different kinds of motivations. But they hope to be, many of them at least, hope to be spiritually inspired by the time they finish the journey. So it is true of all of us. We go on journeys. We try to make sense of our lives. And we try to find our rootedness in the gospel. So one of the ways of thinking about this celebration is that we have the picture in this beautiful story of people coming from afar, questers, seekers, guided by the star, trying to find something extra from what they already knew, trying to look for, in a sense, the Lord of history. And they are very much connected, of course, in the gospel story to the vulnerability of Jesus, the threat as an infant from those who exercise power in the day. No need for other claimants to power and authority. So as we mull over and try to make sense of this beautiful story, I'd like to propose for you another modern version of the same thing. 3 faculty members from Notre Dame go to Tour, which Notre Dame runs for the Vatican, a center of scholarship and study, right there in Jerusalem, looking into Bethlehem. First scholar, let's call him Caspar, is a philosopher who specializes in aesthetics, the theory of beauty, what attracts us, how we can make sense in terms of transcendental values like truth and beauty and goodness. The second one, let's call her Mary, is somebody who is an astronomer and spends most of her life trying to utilize the very best methods of exploration of space to try to develop a theory about the origins of the universe. And the last one, let's call him John, is an engineer who works with information technology and the latest forms of communication, trying to enhance the capacity of the human race, in the very best sense of the term, to interact effectively, to break down barriers, and to recognize their common humanity. They don't know each other, but they're all people of faith. And so they go on a journey to the Holy Land. They gather each day for reflection and conversation. They tour the sacred spots. From the roof of Tantur, they look down into Bethlehem, and they try to draw the connection between their search for the truth and the truth that is revealed or was revealed there in that small village in Palestine. By the time that they leave, they recognize that each of them has a separate path to truth, but those truths converge in such a way that all of their lives can be illuminated by the discovery of why that birth was so necessary for the human condition. I think that's the journey all of us are called to make, to try to draw a connection between our daily lives, our spiritual hungers, our desire for meaning and purpose, and our openness, not simply to the birth of God in Jesus, but also as we celebrate the unfolding of his mission, his death and resurrection, and the gift of Pentecost, how each of us are called to regularly journey in his name, to recognize Jesus as the source of all truth. And what happens in universities like this, that we're called to share the quest, to seek for the truth in our own way, and ultimately to recognize that he, born in the manger, is the source of all truth and ultimate meaning.